this year and hope as a model for the Communities Grant Museum going forward. So our previous programme was full of really popular events that did have a really lovely impact on a lot of consultation we've done over the previous years within the community, with a really clear aim to create a sustainable, lasting and continuing rather than way of working in the community, building on the work that we've been doing and enabling real, accessible, meaningful engagement, rather than just like the odd bit of engagement here and there. So therefore, the starting point was to think of a number of different sort of pathways into engaging with the museum through outreach, which would potentially overlap across the community and build confidence in the museum being a place for people in the city who may not normally visit. To further this, I also built in funding for a number of free golden tickets, we're calling them, which are family memberships as a thank you for key families who've taken part. Because one of the things that came up a lot in the previous 3 years is the pay barrier of the entrance fee into the museum was a genuine barrier for many of the local communities that we were working with, which seemed a real shame. And by having those free memberships, that enables unlimited free admission to us and our partner museums for a year, and it takes away that pay barrier without it seeming like charity, which I think is really important. So thank you for taking part in the activities. We then have a number of activities delivered also in partnership with the City Council Communities team, who I've been working with a lot over the past 3 years, and also working with freelance practitioners, which I think really helps support the local creative economy, which is something that quite often gets overlooked, I think. But they're an absolute key part of what we can offer. And also other organisations, for example, we've been doing quite a lot of work recently with Spurgeon's. So these different pathways, they're kind of roughly divided into a number of things. So we have early years and young family outreach. So this is to include things such as family creative community picnics, which are a really lovely thing that we have tested over the last couple of years. Me and Hannah, who used to previously work for the City Council team, did a number of them on the Friary, which again is a lovely thing. Young families can come, there's space for all, babies to play, lovely creative family craft activities, trying to link it a bit back to local history in the museum, but also it was a really lovely way of providing a free kind of healthy picnic for those who might have been struggling to afford food. And it was just a lovely event. We put picnic rugs down on the floor and make it like a lovely immersive kind of experience. So it feels like kind of a nice treat too. And as well as this, I've been piloting some more kind of structured workshops. So this is what in previous years I've been developing a bit with Spurgeon's, whilst they were still mainly early years providers. And we did a lot of really interesting things. My background is a lot, I'm a writer as well as working at the museum. We did a lot around story creating and world building as a really interesting pedagogical thing for kind of building child development in the early years and encouraging imaginative play and parents feeling confident at home with that. And that was inspired by favourite objects and local history and imaginatively transforming our everyday surroundings. Then we also have family outreach days covering a wider age range. And these are kind of, again, we sort of have the discovery days at the museum, which are big kind of drop-in events, but we were quite interested in actually, could we have things that were on a slightly smaller scale, but had that depth of engagement and provided interesting kind of introduction to new skills or to trying out something that families can do together that will connect them to the museum. But again, it's us going to them, leading to a way of encouraging them to feel more involved. So I think that felt there was quite a good provision in the city in general for some of the, you've got your fun days, there's some of the things that all creative do, so we thought there's a bit of a gap to do this. So for example, we've got 2 family ceramics workshops coming up at the end of August at Bemerton Heath Centre and at the Friary Centre, working with local artists for that as well. And there's other things in the planning, including, for example, family kind of nature writing, kind of creative writing, kind of walks and things like that on the meadows or in the parks. There's lots of potential within that. There's the Friary Youth Creative Club, which I've been running for over 2 years now. This is a group of teenagers that meet every week at the Friary Centre after school on a Thursday, and that's a partnership project with the City Council Communities team. So far, they've done 2 exhibitions, which have gone really well, one at Surrey Centre and one at Five Rivers. And the plan for this year, and this is always co-created with them, is they want to publish a book, which is going to be this amazing imaginary museum inspired by their local city and the local environment, and they go to these adventures through it. It's really beautiful, and it's combining their artwork and their creative writing. And so this grant is actually to do it as a proper published book, because I think things like that in the exhibition, it's really important because it makes their work visible and valued, and that makes a huge difference to just that workshop. But originally, that group was set up in consultation with Sarah, and back in the day Sharon, so we're going way back now. And it was, we realised that there was a real need for a kind of more creative, quiet alternative to hang out on a Tuesday, and that there are a lot, specifically girls, although it's not a girl-only group, boys are welcome to join. We do have one boy that comes every week, that felt that maybe Hangout was a bit too boisterous for them, or would sit in the corner, or had stuff going on at home. We were like, actually, it'd be really nice just to have a really safe, emotional space where they can come, but also really get to explore their creative skills. And it's become a really bonded group now, and the well-being impact of that has been hugely measurable. It's been really amazing. And I mean, part of that can be seen by the fact that the same young people have come every single week for over 2 years now, which is quite a commitment on their part, and parents are now connected. So again, it's with all these things, I try to weave in ways of engagement that would then have a longer lasting impact. So for example, one of the parents of the young people in that group, she's now contacted the museum to bring in a group that she's been working with of adults with learning disabilities, but she said to me she wouldn't have felt confident doing that before, but because of our engagement with her child, she knew me, I was a safe kind of friendly face around the area, and so therefore she's now kind of got wide family engagement. And then if they're one of the families, which they would be, that would get the golden tickets, again, that's a nice kind of wider way of engaging with them. So that's a really lovely group. We're also planning to use some of the grant for wider school projects at the moment. It's very much, there's off the peg offers where you can book and the school pays to come to do a one-off, say, workshop on Saxons or something like that. I've been trying to build in, through working with specific pilot schools, St Martin's and Woodlands in particular, a model of working on mini projects, but of course those are things that aren't funded by the schools paying for them. A lot of schools don't have the budgets anymore. This enables us to do some really exciting, creative, longer term projects in the schools that really need that support, and that really work to build a sense of pride and belonging in communities, and work on confidence and aspiration building, as well as, you know, which is a little bit different to what we can normally offer. An example of this would be an expansion of a project that we started last year, which is the Giant's Friend project. When working with Woodlands as a pilot school, I asked them what they wanted to know about the Salisbury Giant, and they were really curious as to whether or not the Giant had any friends and family. And I was like, well, actually, he doesn't, well, except for Hobnob, but actually, if you look at the history of pageant giants across Europe, they often have wives and children and wider circles of friends. So they decided they'd like to make some friends and family for the giant. So I worked with Woodlands and Pemberton Heath and St Martin's, and also Woodford Valley in that first instance, to create friends and family for the giant. One created him a pet, one created him a wife, and one created him a friend. And they made those in a series of workshops, built the characters, built stories, and then they came to the museum with them for a special VIP day the day before our reopening last year. And they got to have, we made a sort of new traditional sort of folk ceremony, and they introduced their friends and family to the giant. The idea behind it is those children, they are part of the giant's family now. The giant going forward has this, we want all the children to feel that he belongs to them too. So that's an example of something that we would like to expand to include more schools in the city, to build this family over time. But that kind of project is the sort of thing that we don't normally have the capacity or budget to run. We were also originally going to include workshops for adults as a first point of engagement, but budget-wise we had to rejig this. And as our community curator and myself, we already do a lot of wider outreach with parents and grandparents. We felt that the parents and grandparents would also engage in the other activities with this, and that it was better to use the remainder of the grant for the large-scale community event that was in the bid. So for this, we plan to invite all the people who've taken part in the other activities to come and create a museum in a day with their own creative work and memories and stories and objects of personal meaning. So a pop-up local museum of and for local people. And then as well, as I said, the grant, the golden tickets as mentioned, with the memberships available to key families to take part. So yeah, that's what we're going to spend on. But for the future, so the museum is really expanding its community work and also diversifying how it works in more famous settings such as schools. As I mentioned at the beginning, since I started, one of my main goals has been to think about the museum's role in the city as a civic hub and a place that local people feel is for them. So all the work I've been leading with the National Lottery project has been towards this goal, and going forward, our community grant work will build upon this ethos, ensuring that we are truly a local museum celebrating the city. So yes, that's a bit about our plans for the future, and hopefully that's something that can build. We've also got some very exciting things happening, like a new properly funded, not by this, internship starting, which hopefully again that will be a lovely thing where will help support a young person wanting to get into the sector who might struggle to get into it before, but also mean that we're building the team to be able to deliver a lot more exciting community projects for the future. Sorry, that was wrong. Any questions? Sorry, I'm rather rattled through that.
So when do I jump in? No, lovely, thank you. No, really nice to have a summary of your work with the grants and your work with sort of our community teams and sort of the community. No, it's lovely. Before I jump in, any questions? Other councillors, Councillor.
Yeah, just a quick overview. So I did some stuff with the people, the team at the Friary. So the exhibition we had there.
Yeah, no, they loved that you came. They were very chuffed.
Yeah, Mayor Kit and all that stuff over the rest of the exhibition they did at Five Rivers was really good actually. And some of them, there's actually some talent in that as well.
Yeah, I'm
really pleased that went well. And hopefully we can continue that.
Thank you. No, they were so chuffed. They were very impressed with the mayoral thing as well.
I can come as ex-mayor for the next one if you want.
But things like that make it actually, but it is an interesting point to raise when we're talking about visibility and celebrating their work. That really meant something to them. And I think people showing up in that way, it does really make a difference and make them feel, seen and that their work. So, that effort of having a little launch, inviting people, it does make a big difference, and the confidence level of those young people has grown hugely, which again, parents, I'm excited partly to do with that group. So, yeah, excellent. And no one has any tricky questions for me about the stuff I didn't deliver, but I have got it in my head if anyone does.
Well, I'll come in. I don't mean to be a tricky question, but more curiosity, because you mentioned the adult had to be cut back.
Yes.
Yeah, is there hope to sort of bring that back in the future and that sort of longevity and sustainability?
I mean, when we originally put in for this run, we sneakily put in for a little bit of an uplift to see if we could expand a bit more. And then obviously in the consultation with Sarah, it was like, what would you do with the original amount? What would we do with the uplift? And then what would we do if we needed a cut from the original amount? And we were thrilled that we got allocated up the usual amount that we got. We didn't get a little uplift. We thought we'd give it a go. And we did feel that I think with the body of work, having that big celebratory event, it brings it together, it makes it kind of feel celebratory, and then it's also a lovely kick-off point for people to remember and mental health social prescribing projects. So we're doing it over this year, we're doing quite a lot of additional stuff with adults. It was felt that in terms of actually those ways into engagement, perhaps we've kind of all the ways to get things covered, perhaps that was the one where we kind of probably could cover it through other things for this year. But certainly going forward, absolutely.
So there's been a rethink, but it's not forgotten, and
Yeah, I mean, no group's forgotten.
Well,
I mean, the whole
idea
with the idea with that sort of I like the idea with pathways of engagement that it is like this joined up thinking. So someone might do a project at school, and then they'll sort of tell their auntie, and it turns out she went to I popped and did an art course, and then they'll find out that my neighbour's little kid went to one of the picnics, and that therefore lots of different people across things are all feeling that they are starting to feel connected, and over time this builds and builds, and this idea, I mean, at the moment in the museum world, there's a lot of long needed talk, I think, about, the civic responsibility of museums and where they sit within their communities. And there's a lot of interesting talk around sort of museums as community hubs and civic hubs, and what do they actually give to their city. And when you're somewhere like we are, right in the Cathedral Close, that's a really interesting, because people often think, oh, tourist destination, because you're right in the centre, but actually we've got an amazing local history collection. We've got, not that you would only be interested in local history, but there's so much that museums can do. And with my role at the museum continuing, I said with a new internship in the department and a community coach, we're now really well equipped moving forward to be able to provide this kind of work.
That sounds really good. I say, no, lovely to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I would say thank you very much.
No,
It's been
thank
really
you.
good. And yeah,
Thank you for having me.
please come again.
I'm going to dash off if it's not rude, just because I live near Froome, although
Oh.
I work in Salisbury, and I
Understood.
have things to feed and etc., etc. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep. Let's do 10 of them. Perfect. So Matt, yeah, if you want to come up and discuss the budget outturn and then on to the team update.
Good evening, everybody. So a few bits of housekeeping, I guess. First, thank you, Council Leader Charleston, for your work previously on this committee. Welcome to all of those new councillors here for the first time, either as a newly elected or as a first-time councillor on the committee. Good evening to my officer colleagues. Congratulations to the newly elected chairman and vice chair, and obviously to the millions watching at home. So, I don't know if you have all read the report, but you've certainly been furnished with the report prior to this meeting. So I guess rather than me run verbatim through each item, I'd simply like to open up the floor if there are any things in particular that you would like an expansion on. I think the variances are quite clearly explained. But again, if you would wish to, and if you take it up to the top of 4.4, please. So just simply to say that yes, the Guildhall had an exceptional year, helped by the Dawn Sturgis inquiry, obviously. And as a result of that, we have now become a trusted friend for the Home Office and would look to secure additional, Council, which is a successful event for us. And as a direct result of that relationship with the Home Office. So we're very pleased about that. If you look at the ticket sales, we previously reported that there was a standing issue with some VAT treatment, and we are now looking to resolve that as early in this financial year as possible. So we will effectively pay that bill. Information and shop mobility. Well, there was the two causes for that underspend. The payroll budgets and the annual pay award not having been yet nationally determined nor implemented was 21k of that variance, and then furthermore a £27,000 overachievement in ticket sales income, and that was simply due to a delay in settling a tour operator's account whilst its VAT treatment was verified. So both variances are expected to disappear by year end. Dilapidations, I can't speak too much about the dilapidations specifically. So I would like to move on to the waste disposal. Because I don't have that level of detail, Councillor, about the dilapidations. If there are any additional questions that anybody would like to ask for some clarification, but the depot sits more with environments than this committee. That was the reason for the statement. Shall I move on?
I had a small question.
Sure.
I would imagine it'd be entirely an environment. So why is it even in our report here? Dilapidation.
I think that's a very good question. I think it's because of the budget code.
I suppose, can I be assured that, maybe this is a question I need to ask Mark, but that if we're ever in this sort of situation again, that we would budget for this sort of, allow in the budget for a dilapidations expense?
Yeah,
It
sure.
seemed like an unusual expense for a end lease situation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, noted.
I would just throw one more comment in there. Oh, yeah, sorry, Councillor Corbyn.
Thanks. Dilapidations is fairly standard for handing back any property. When we've hired our properties to other people, we've expected them to carry out dilapidations. So yes, it should be something that's budgeted for, but it's not unexpected. It's just big for this property because we've had it for a long time and it's gone back. But hopefully, once that's all settled, it'll be back to normal and we're on our own property.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Yes, guys. Matt, waste disposal.
Yeah, so you can see that there was an underspend in waste disposal. That's generally across the organisation, but there was an underspend on waste disposal for the market waste disposal. Both cancelling each other out effectively, but it was an inconsistent coding, to be fair, by finance team and by officers. So that will be addressed, and you will not see that reoccur for this financial year. We're currently going through an exercise at looking at all of our waste disposal contracts anyway. So we hope that will address some of the issues we have about payments and service and all these other things that are taking place. I'll move on to the irrecoverable VAT. I mean, that's a fairly self-explanatory paragraph, but previously we had not properly accounted for our VAT expenditure relating to our exempt services. That would include crematorium and markets. So we'd overclaimed on the VAT, leading to a liability that we had to address with HMRC. This was detected by our RFO. We issued a voluntary declaration, which the HMRC accepted. The residual costs have been included in your budgeting for this year. The last one, which is the future towns. So again, when we need to absolutely do to understand that.
Any questions on that or any others? Yep, Councillor Hocking.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. Matt, go back to the market waste.
Yes.
Historically, and from memory, the pitch fees for the market covered the costs of disposal of an awful lot of cardboard waste from 2 or 3 fruit and vegetables. Is that still the case? Because there was at one time, again from memory, this was a few years back, the cost of that disposing of the cardboard waste from those 2 or 3 stands was 80 or 90% of the entire cost of waste disposal from the market. So there was always a question as should the traders pay for that themselves, or should that cost be amortised through the pitch fee across the rest of the market square?
Yes, good question. So that cost is significant, and we've been working with traders to. So there are 2 issues. There is that they don't discard of it in the correct way, or they don't break it down, they don't flatten it, they don't make sure that bins are properly used. So we've looked to address that with them directly, with a little bit of education, some conversations. We've recently undertaken an exercise to remeasure particularly the fruit and veg suppliers' pitches. And as a result, they will be paying more than last year, in some cases in excess of £5,000 each. So hopefully that will address some of those issues that relates to their fees. When we look at the waste disposal contracts as a whole for the council, we'll also be looking at, do we have the right amount of bins for this recycling? So are we actually providing enough receptacles for the people to actually get rid of the stuff in the correct way? So a little bit of education, a little bit of recharging, a little bit of looking at our stock. Hopefully will make the issue a little bit more comfortable for everybody.
And second question, go to scroll down to the last bit. There we go. So Experience Salisbury. The City Council used to fund Experience Salisbury to an amount which outreach again. I can't recall offhand.
Hmm.
Do we still do that? And if we do, how much is it?
Yeah, so I'm unable to tell you how much it is, but I will certainly follow that up. A decision was made fairly early in our new chief executive's tenure to re-look at our levels of funding for some of these organisations until we were a little bit more confident of their ability to deliver in a collaborative way. I think, and don't quote me, I will find you the exact figure. I think it was somewhere in the region of about £10,000. Feels about right, but as I say, we'll make sure you get that point of clarification.
If you could do, just so the question for the minutes is a request to clarify how much money is or was spent on funding or helping fund Experience Salisbury. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from councillors? Perfect. I've got a question. No, I was just going to add, if possible, to Councillor Hocking's request, would it be possible when we have completed the investigation on that 15,000 underspend mentioned at the bottom, that again, it could be shared in an email?
Of course.
But we find out the details of where the rest of the underspend went, or was, or didn't go.
Of course.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then I recommend that this committee notes this financial position for the business codes at this point. Thank you. Lovely. So, Matt stays there. We move on to the business team updates.
So you'll have a presentation come up on the screen. So this is just a short insight, I guess, into each portfolio within the business and communications team, written by my team. That I'd just like to share some of the things that we've been looking at and some of the things that we've achieved over the last, I guess, 6 months. So if you'd like to go to the first slide, please. And as I say, I won't read the slide in particular, but I know that Council Leader Charleston may have a particular interest in our social media activity and our reach. So you'll be interested to see that in the last 3 months, we've achieved 1 million views on Facebook. Now, you may think, well, that's 1 million people. Doesn't work like that. So views translate into 187,000 people looked at our website over 1 million times in that period. So that would have been through a thread or an extra thread, but fundamentally they came through our portal at some stage and they were counted. So that's quite a significant number. We've reached a milestone of having 10,000 followers on Facebook, which is exceptional. You can see that over 50% of those are Salisbury based. And although the exact locations aren't available for the remaining 43, we will be able to drill down into that information a little bit more as we get a little bit better at understanding and looking into that data. So our communications officer does a great job of trying to analyse. For me, data is extremely important because it helps understand how we pitch events, where people are coming from, what their ages are, what they're looking to do, and how we can best service and give the best experiences possible. So obviously you've been shared with those, so by all means come back to me after this meeting if you have any questions or you'd like to understand the data a little bit more. I don't think there's anything more on that unless you... Do you want to move on? Thank you. So we had the St George's Day and the Armed Forces events recently. Armed Forces, we have received some feedback about Armed Forces, which we'll take directly with those councillors who fed that back. What I will say is that it's not always easy for the events team to, as much as it would like to maintain the standards sometimes that they would wish. And sometimes our events fall a little bit short of that. So there is an apology in that respect. I think for the most part, most of our events are well attended, well organised and enjoyed. And when there is a rare misstep or where we aren't able to perhaps come up to a standard that's expected of us, we absolutely look to address that and make sure that things improve as we move forward. We had a significant period of absence from our events officer at the beginning of the year for 3 months, and that was very difficult for us to manage and work through. But we did everything that we could. I'm glad to report that that individual is now back, healthy, and working with us. So we're very pleased about that. That's more important. And then we'll be looking to get back on track, perhaps with some of these events that the perception is that they fell a little bit short. I say that with particular reference to Armed Forces Day, where we received some feedback. Fair on the Square is going very well. We're very pleased about that. We went out to tender for both the beverage and food this time. Previously, we hadn't done that. We'd just gone out for the bar. We awarded it to a new company, somebody from outside of Salisbury. We increased the price, so we were able to achieve more income. We went out with the food, and obviously we were happy to award it to Charter 1227 and Simmons, and again, an increased tender rate. We've now locked that in for 3 years, so we don't have to worry about that now for the next 3 years. So that's great for us. So that element of that is now done, which is fantastic. Now it's just a question of refining that product, I guess, over the next few years to make sure that we learn some lessons from this year. What do we do well? What do we not do so well? How can we make it better? For those who may be worried about the people from Salisbury who weren't successful in the bar, they're involved in providing some experiences for us. So they weren't cut out of the loop entirely. They were asked if they were able to do. They're a multifaceted company, so they're able to deliver lots of elements for us. But they're now delivering experiences on the Square as part of that, rather than doing the bar specifically. So they're still involved, which is great. We have our first Mela this weekend. It's our first try at this, so please bear with us. We have tried to do something that we feel is appropriate. And I think moving forward, we will certainly be engaging more with our new head of communities and the communities team in general to try and understand how communities can play a bigger role in organising, managing and producing a Mela, rather than just us producing a Mela based on what we feel people want to see. But we hope if you're able to join us on the 13th, please do. We have ordered a new PA system, as we are aware that there are some issues with the current system that we have out on the Square. So we're very pleased about that. We'll also use that in other departments, of course, which will be some cost savings across the whole organisation. So our land rental and roundabout is on track to already meet the income target for 25-26. So no shocks there. Would you like to move on, Jenny, please? We are in discussions about the rides. I guess what we're asking is, what would your opinion be for the which ride would you like to see this year as the main ride? At 158 tickets sold. That was the first of our Guildhall sessions. We'll be looking to hold a few more over the course of the year, so we're very excited about that. The event produced nearly £4,000, including the bar sales, and we had a profit of around £1,400. So again, pleased with that. But more importantly, people that attended the event were very happy. They enjoyed the evening. They liked the intimacy of it. They thought that this venue was nice. They weren't particularly offended by the comedians. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but they certainly seemed to have a good evening, so that was great. And as you'll see over the course of the year, you'll see that we've already started to and will continue with various maintenance schemes, such as the new lighting rig in the banqueting hall, sorry, not in the banqueting hall, in the Crown Court. And also we're looking to do the ceiling at some stage in here, bit of liquor paint here and there, just to make the venue more appealing, to try and attract perhaps different audiences, more conference based or yeah. Anything else? Thank you. So the information centre, as you can see, we welcomed visitors from 27 different countries. 2,700 phone calls by the customer team between April and June. 8,600 customers served. New range, Spitfire badges, new Poultry Cross tea towels were introduced. Hopefully by selling them, that gets us some money to fix the Poultry Cross. That'd be quite nice. New local interest books were introduced, Family Days in the Wye Valley, Best of Milford Book, Churches of Salisbury District. We continue to sell the tickets for the Stonehenge bus tours, Studio Theatre, Salisbury, Symphonia, Salisbury City Guides for daily walking tours and the weekly ghost tours. And summer Fridays, which are at 8 o'clock. Do you want to move on through, Janine, please? Shop mobs. So, we attended, I guess some of you guys may have been there as well. We recently attended the opening of the forecourt, recently refurbished forecourt at the train station. We will very soon be looking to start officially that collaboration that we have managed to discuss with South Western Railway about being a mobility hub, if you like. So if you're visiting Salisbury, get in touch with Shop Mobility. We'll pop down. We'll bring you a scooter or a chair. We will help you to understand how to use it, how to get about, give you some tips on where are nice places to go, and enjoy yourself. It's a really great initiative, and that's the first of its kind. So we're very pleased about that. So we'll be looking to expand upon that with Daniel and the team down at SWR. Obviously, we have our scooter scoots, which continue to be very popular, and the next scooter scoot will be the River Park area on the 16th. Again, if you want to join us, please do. Garage walls now been mended at Shop Mob. We had over exuberant parking by one of our Shop Mob volunteers. It has now been repaired, and the external wall's been done as well. So, and just like to say that Shop Mobility and the Information Centre, for me, are very important to Salisbury. We see a lot of these types of facilities closing in other cities and towns. And it certainly isn't my or our intention to do so with these. I think they're much valued, much used, and most welcome. I think people very much enjoy having them here. So for me, it's about how we make them better rather than about how we strip them back or stop them or make them worse. Next, Jenny.
That's it. Councillor Hockin with your loads of questions.
Yeah, so let's roll back to the start of the events bit, shall we? There we go. Okay, St George's Day, for Armed Forces Day, so outside of the PA stuff and all the rest of it. So for me, I thought, and this, I'm not being critical of the City Council in any way, shape or form yet, I thought Armed Forces Day is about our armed forces. So we have the Royal Artillery, the Military Police, and the Rifles all have freedom of the city. The Royal Artillery turned up, quite a few of them, a few stands and a bit of kit on show. The RMP had a bit of a gazebo with a few people on a little display, and the Rifles did a no-show. Now I think if we've given these regiments the freedom of the city, when we put on an event for the armed forces, I think they should recognise that, and I think they should attend. I just felt that on the day itself, it felt a bit like there was some armed forces stuff along the bit between, the Reeves and the Ox Road. But the rest of it was a bit too much like an ordinary market day for me. So I would like to see a bigger presence. I'd like us to request a bigger presence from the armed forces community. John Glenn did a careers event in here a couple of months ago, and we had the submarine service were here. Yeah, so I'd like to have seen them at Armed Forces Day. I'd like to see the Royal Marines, because we've not seen them for a long time. And I'd like to see, because this is a recruiting day for the armed forces, so I'd like to see a bit more heavy metal on the market square, stuff for kids to climb on, that sort of stuff. Because this is the day where we showcase what the forces could do. And at the moment, they are struggling recruiting, and I think we can help with that, but we can only help them if they help us. So I think for next year, I'd like a bit of a push from us to the armed forces community that says we're putting on this day for you, and we would like you to turn up in numbers. We have other towns in the county had marches from various regiments flybys, that sort of stuff. I think Armed Forces Day at Compton Abbas, they had a couple of Spitfires flying around for the day. So a fly past maybe. I know when I did it the first time around all those years ago, we managed to get an Apache helicopter to do a flyby, and we had a tank on the market square. So it's that sort of stuff that I'd like us to ask our armed forces colleagues to step up a bit and put on a bit of a show for us, I think. So that would be my ask for Armed Forces Day. Fair on the square. So the fair on the square, what's that going to look like physically compared to what we had last year, for instance?
So the theme for this year is the Jurassic Park Minecraft sort of mashup, if you like. If you look at some of our visuals and some of the things that we produce for the for our social media and our posters for outside, it gives that impression. The Crazy Croco will be decorated in that theme. It will also be covered this year, so that those who wish to play when the weather's slightly inclement can do so. We've repositioned some of our attractions. We've introduced remote-controlled boats and cars this year. We've also introduced a petting zoo at some stage. We will have that. And we have introduced some pop-up Fair on the Square events that will be taking place on the marketplace during that 6-week period. Bands will be playing Thursdays, Fridays and Saturday evenings on the stage, which is positioned above the bar. So we really tried to make it a little bit more of an experience this year to get people a little bit more involved. And there are some visuals there. Thanks, Andy. To show. So you can see that the full, you can see the prices and various other things. I think we're just trying to give it a slightly different vibe, if that makes any sense. Give it a little bit of a refresh, make it a little bit more exciting with a couple of those experiences. We would never have had the sort of boats and those bits. We'll obviously we're looking at Skittles Alley, we're looking at that kind of stuff. So
Are you going to find room for all this?
that's the question. We will find room. I think what is new is that we will be looking to use the market square on non-market days. I think that's significant. I think we've never done that before. Everything's just been kind of self-contained where it was. So, and we'll obviously be announcing when those things are due to come on the square. But yes, we're absolutely trying to sweat the asset a little bit more.
All right, good stuff. And on the subject of music, so I had a bit of a gripe from the Oxrow and the Market Inn, actually, about music on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. So they're saying they're basically not allowed to have any at all over the 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So the ask was, if we knew when there was music on the fair on the square on those whatever nights it's happening, and if we know when there's not music on, can we let the rest of the market
The answer is
know?
yes, and we've already discussed that with them.
Okay.
So it's been addressed.
Super stuff.
Yeah.
MELA, M-E-L-A, I've heard that used everywhere, but the acronym stands for,
God, no, you're asking.
somebody must know. Everybody says there's a MELA, and I'm
Yeah.
going, what?
I absolutely have no idea.
Bone MELA? Flowers? We can't be putting on a MELA and no one knows what it actually
No,
means.
so you just
surely.
type in. So you type in MELA meaning, it will give you the meaning.
It's got to be multi-something or other, isn't it?
Sanskrit for gathering or to meet or fair.
But it's an
Hindu
acronym, isn't it?
festival or fair.
MELA.
No. It's it's not like a multi-equality.
Yeah, it's not an
led-
acronym, it's
It's a
a sound.
description.
So I assume from the fact that it's Salisbury MELA in capitals, it was an acronym for something.
No, it's a.
yeah,
it's
I
a-
can see that.
Okay, so it's just a gathering.
Sure.
Okay. Events. When it comes to events and fair floating positions, you're probably asking the wrong demographic of people which ride they prefer on the square. And if I was 6 instead of 60, then I could probably give you a more informed opinion.
Well, look, we can make the choice.
Yeah, I'd ask the schools. Okay, the bar. So we had 7 events and we made a gross, what was the net profit?
I thought we'd said that, hadn't we?
You said here, it says 7 events have been run to carry out generating.
Sorry,
a
that
gross
is that is the
profit of
that is
1220.
net, Sven. 1,226 quid. That is net.
That is net.
That is
gross.
net.
So divide that by 7, and that's sort of 190 quid
Yep.
per event. And if we'd have got someone to come and do a bar for us and charge them for the privilege, would we still have made 190 quid, or would we have made less?
No, we would have made less because we'd have had to have paid them. We wouldn't have, and we couldn't have taken any money for the bar. So the principle was that if we did it ourselves, could we make any money?
Okay.
Whereas before we were taking a bath on it, to be fair.
All right, so we weren't asking people to say, here's the opportunity to run your own bar. By the way, it'll cost you 250 quid for the night. Okay.
No.
Okay. Comedy night, offensive, and I just make me laugh because where did I read something about what you find offensive, I find funny,
Yeah.
which is why you're sad and I'm happy. And the information centre ticket sales. There was an issue we had with ticket sales where we effectively ended up almost paying for the privilege of selling other people's tickets for them a little while ago. Has that now been resolved?
Yeah, it has, and it just needed to be a change in the price.
Okay, good stuff. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Charleston?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sven, for all those questions. I absolutely agree with what you said about the Armed Forces Day. 100% echo those comments. I will disagree with you about the floating fairground ride. Historically, I've been the only councillor.
present company accepted because I did see you. Yes.
Every year I've ridden on that thing, so I think I'm possibly the most qualified in this room.
So I take back everything I said. Chair. Sorry. Yes, I should retract that.
I think whichever one is the most terrifying gets my vote. They have gotten increasingly more terrifying as the years have gone by. I think Starflyer was the first one, my first year. I think I went on that with Paul Sample, who's since declined to ride on any of them subsequently. So that's his experience, that's his thrill ceiling. But that chaos thing looks suitably terrifying, so that's got my vote. Thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate it. It's really nice. It is really nice to hear about all the little. It's good to hear about the big income streams, but it's really nice to hear about the little income streams as well. Really good news about the bar. Again, appreciate the point. It's a little profit per event, but a little profit is, I don't suppose, it is better than negative profit. My question about that is it obviously like a little profit, good thing? We don't always measure these things in terms of what profit is good. Is it sort of something that the staff? I suppose what I'm asking is there a sort of soft negative effect on this? Are we getting staff to do these things? Is it something they're enjoying, not enjoying, disliking? I'd hate to be like, yes, we're doing a bar event, and then everyone who's staffed on it hates it. I suppose that's my question. I don't know if you have an answer for that, but
Yeah, so we do talk to our event casuals and the staff that are here when we have these events. I guess I have a similar question. Is the two gentlemen out there this evening enjoying this council meeting?
that's very fair.
But I think what we're trying to just show is that in our bids and savings, what we asked for was £10,000 to buy a bar. Now that is a significant spend. Now, if I'd have spent £10,000 buying a bar, I'd already be in the hole for 8,800 quid. Now, that's not why. What I wanted to do was see if table bars played. Now, some of those events were sort of seed talk, stuff like that, so interval things. The one that made the most money, you will see, was the comedy evening. The bar element of that was, it's probably £600 to £700, and that was one where people could have more time at the bar, so they weren't just popping out for 5 minutes to get a drink in between somebody doing something. So there's definitely something in this. We're just refining it, I guess, to sort of understand, well, if I have 40 people here, it's probably not worth putting on a bar. If I have 150 people here, it probably is. Obviously, we have to buy all the stock, but all of the staff costs were covered. All of the stock costs were covered. All of the utility costs were covered. So everything that went into us being here and doing that still yielded a profit, where previously it just didn't.
Great, fantastic. And I guess the Guildhall session seeing just more of it is sounds great. And it sounds like a real holistic model of let's put on more events, get them through the doors, get them buying more at the bar. It sort of turns into a virtuous circle, I guess, which sounds ideal. Final thing from me, and you know, you joked that the Poultry Cross Prince could fund the restoration of the Poultry Cross. Very funny joke. Can we? And I just thought about it just a second. Like, is there value in going, let's put a card reader or a QR code on those hoardings and say, you know, save our, not quite save our Poultry Cross, but you know, it will be a significant spend. Probably, we don't know the full impact of it yet, but like, is that an avenue of crowdsourced fundraising that we could explore?
I think the short answer is absolutely. So I'm sorry, I know you have a question, but so what we will be doing over the next few weeks is we'll be placing some content on the hoardings. So what do we want it to look like when it's done? So a bit of aspirational stuff, some advertisements about what the council does, come and support your local markets, book the Guildhall, do this kind of stuff. So we'll be using that hoarding as an asset in that respect. We all go to shops now, don't we? And we thought about the information centre where you can give a donation simply by clicking red or green on the pay terminal. I think that's probably a decision for full council to see if that's an avenue that we want to go down. But having things like donation stations that you see at the Guildhall, or you see at the Cathedral and various other places, is certainly something that I'd like to explore, because it could support the Mayor's charity and anything else that we wish to do moving forward. So I like the idea of crowdfunding. I like the idea of community getting behind something that they feel particularly passionate about. But we have to balance that, of course, against, well, it's the council's responsibility to fix this. So I think there's certainly a conversation, but I wouldn't be against it.
Thank you.
Back to Councillor Corbyn.
Thanks. I'll take that bit first because you've now prompted me to think of something else. So I've now got two questions. Right. Well, so the QR codes are the easiest and safest because you can just laminate them and slap them on the hoarding. Why don't you look back at the history of the Poultry Cross and actually put that on there and have a QR code? Because maybe if people read about the history, especially tourists, maybe they would do the QR code and scan and spend some money. Going back to the bars, the little sessions and things that you do in here will grow over time. But until we're brave enough to take on the bar out there and have it for the 6 weeks, that's going to be when we'll win. But I mean, obviously, that's going to be sometime in the future. But that's what you need to aspire to, because I think that will give us a better revenue stream. And especially if it is that we're putting on music or activities, acrobats or whatever, and have that revenue coming through. But the work that is going on is good and positive, and it's much better than we've had for a long time, I think. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Councillor. I think there's a balance to be struck here between greed, collaboration, and competition. I've had some meetings recently with some colleagues who own some establishments in and around the area, and how just because of their location, they perhaps feel that they don't get as much footfall or as much business as some of the ones that are more centrally located. Now, I think that's a challenge for them to stay relevant, to understand what it is that they need to do. We've spoken about, in fact, us having a bar on the square in the summer is controversial because the bars on the square want all of the business during the summer. So there's always that balance to find between doing the right thing, providing experiences, making sure there's enough for everybody. Did have a conversation with John Glenn and a few other councillors and the mayor during the opening of the forecourt about dividing the city into segments. So you have your cultural segment, you have your restaurant segment, you have your food and beverage segment, you have your historical segment, and then almost coupling that with some kind of map or something which says, look, if you're interested in this, it's all there. If you're interested in that, it's all there. But please enjoy it all. And I think there's a lot of people competing for the same money. So what sets this venue apart? Intimacy, history. Some people don't like that. People want something a bit larger, they'll go to the Playhouse. People want to do something else, they'll go somewhere else. So it's about sort of recycling those people. And what we don't do too well, and what we'll look to do, is if I'm having an event, when my event's finished, I will tell them what's going on somewhere else. And I will say, now we're done with you, thank you very much. If you'd like a meal or something to drink, or there's something going on in the Playhouse. And equally, I'd like them to do the same for us, so we can recycle that. So I'll call it the Where Next initiative, if you like, or What Next initiative, but that's something that I'd certainly like to see pushed out across BID, Experience Salisbury, and all those other partners.
Oh,
Councillor-
sorry.
Oh,
One
sorry. One
other
more,
thing. With the fair on the square, what time is that going to close? Because some of the issues that were reported to us before was that the music and things ended before really the night ended.
11 o'clock.
That's okay.
Councillor Brown?
Thanks. So I have an issue I'd like to raise, and I've asked several other councillors of which committee we should be raised in, or full council, etc. But this is inspired from my visit with Kez and Councillor Hocking over there to Parnham East Play Park to the play audit. And what became obvious is there's a market failure in accessible play equipment. I was shocked to learn it costs 50 grand apparently to buy an inclusive swing. 50 grand. So the obvious thing, because this is what I do in my day job, is there's a market failure which could be addressed with local businesses, and which there are plenty already manufacturing very adjacent equipment. And is this something, this is the, events, and that's not called business committee, but it's grants committee. Is there something we can look at, either in terms of feasibility study or investment, and it could turn into a joint venture, or it could simply be a business support activity which would fulfill the needs of residents?
I think the short answer is, I think nothing's off the table. How that would look as a joint venture partnership, or as a commercial enterprise, or as some sort of deal is that's in the detail. But I think fundamentally you want people to buy into a cause, don't you?
Yeah.
So we need to find out what the emotional hook is for people to want to do that. I say there's a lot of competition for local businesses' money. We are competing with all of the other stakeholders in Salisbury to get advertising revenue, to get sponsorship revenue. What I will say is I met the new owner of Salisbury Football Club last week at a business expo, which was nice. And he was a very humble guy, very wealthy guy, crypto billionaire. Very wealthy man. Maybe he's the sort of person we should be talking to with a view to parks, open spaces, 5G pitches, play areas, these kind of things. So maybe we could just cultivate those relationships a little bit more while they're new.
Councillor Hocking?
Sorry, Chair, for a second bite of the cherry. Just go back to crowdfunding and Poultry Cross in the same breath. I've no objection to crowdfunding generally, but I would have a massive objection to crowdfunding if that was then used to pay for professional fees to statutory and non-statutory bodies. So architects, engineers, surveyors, English Heritage or Heritage England, depending on what they want to call themselves this week. I would not have crowdfunding. I would not accept crowdfunding if it was used to pay these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments related to this business team update? No. Perfect. We can move on then to the signage project update.
Thank you. So again, you would have been furnished with a short report. It's funny, when I look at the screen, I don't need my glasses. When I look at my copy, I need my glasses, so you have to excuse me. I'm not a young man anymore, and it's the saddest thing ever. So part of my brief, or my remit, was to generate revenue which ultimately could be used to offset some of the expenditure that the people who live and work in Salisbury have, such as precept, council tax, and things like this. We have a number of opportunities in and around the city for advertising and marketing, and it was relatively obvious that we hadn't really used those or examined ways where we could generate more income from those in a more meaningful way, with things like media packs and rate cards and more structured ways of going out to potential customers or clients who may wish to advertise. As a result of that, we in October of last year, of May, sorry, of last year, we asked for some permission to put a road sign, advertising sign on Southampton Road in the park. We were granted that permission, and this year, a month or so ago, 6 weeks ago or so, we were able to put the new road sign on Southampton Road. Some of you may have seen it, and there will be some pictures in there showing that. We did some market research to look at how much places like DC Decal, Clear Channel, and other people may charge for out-of-home advertising. Our costs were relatively low for this type of activity. In fact, about £10 a day, which for most of us, to be fair, is probably lunch. If you go back one previous picture, please. So the first thing that we did is we introduced the proposition. So we had a blank installed, which is always now in situ. So when there's not an advert, that is what it will say. We will also be looking to do that blank on all of our other opportunities, just to introduce that as a proposition across the city. Within our first week, we had 41 inquiries. By week 2, we had 80 inquiries, and by week 3, it was sold out. So that is now sold until the end of March next year, and has generated somewhere in the region of about £10,000. So we're very pleased with that as an opportunity. Now, we don't want to turn Salisbury into Disneyland. We very much respect Salisbury as a city and its aesthetic and what it means. So what this very small briefing paper is really asking for is for permission to continue to look at other potential sites or to improve sites where we already have this type of advertising taking place, to look at our fees and our charges for this stuff to make them more in line with what people can afford and what the market will tolerate, and then to try and generate additional income through that asset as we move forward. So that is basically what that is. So the recommendation is to note the success of the proof of concept, for the committee to endorse further expansion of this as an activity, and for authority on future site selection to be delegated to the Chief Executive Officer in liaison with myself and the chair of this committee.
Perfect. Before I go to questions, I've got one myself. In the report, it mentions the pilot was done in order to see, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but if there would be any complaints. Have there been any complaints?
No.
No. Perfect. No, that's to say, I see the financial success. I've seen the sign myself. It's a great location. I was just curious. So no, that's perfect. Thank you. I will go to questions. Before I do that on the recommendation, my feeling at this stage is we know the report's there. I put forward my support to expand this activity. I would suggest, and we can then leave it for discussion before we finalise a motion, that the authority is as put, but with the addition that new sites have a similar report as we've just had for Southampton Road come back to this committee after a period of time, say 6 weeks, as maybe this was, so, or at the next available committee, and we can make a final decision as a committee at that point as to whether that site continues. So I think rather than give absolute authority, we can be pragmatic, allow the expansion to move forward, but then have this committee still have the ability to question and review sites before they become permanent as much as anything else. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Question over at Councillor Rogers.
I'm happy to support that, Chair. I've got probably a question first and then a comment. Really, first question, does each sign have to have individually planning permission? That's the first question.
So yes, is the short answer. Yeah. So the two additional places we're looking at, which is Churchill Way South, and/or Newbridge Road and London Road, will require planning permission.
Okay. And then I suppose the second, really, it's just an observation from me. I would hate to see the gateway slant road into our city, the other gateway coming down Castle Road, full up with signs every 20, 30 metres. To me, I would want us to have a full debate on that as to whether that's acceptable. So, I'm happy with what you've moved, that you delegate it, but I wouldn't like to see these springing up every 20, 30 metres. I just think that would, I don't know, to me, that would take away the beauty of entering the city from Slant Road, apart from being in the traffic and Castle Road. Thank you.
Councillor Hocking.
Yeah, I'd sort of endorse a bit of what Ricky says, actually. I note you said we don't want to Disneyfy the city. So 5.2, when we've got for this committee to endorse further expansion of this activity, to what limits is that further expansion?
So I think
I'd like that made
Sorry.
clear and that as part of that.
So I think
5.2.
what we're saying is that we're talking about Churchill Way South and/or Newbridge Road initially, and London Road.
So we're talking about what's on that report.
Correct.
Okay, so can we change 5.2 to limit to what's on that report, on this report, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the expansion is curtailed to within the 4 sites in the paper. And I'd like 5.3, not to the chair of this committee, but to this committee, I think. So should we find some more sites? I'd like it to come back to the committee so we can all talk about it and make the decision as a committee rather than as 2 officers and the chair.
I see the point. I guess, is there a middle ground? Let's say I didn't put my name there. I guess the question is, could we limit 5.3 or define it as you're suggesting, Councillor Hocking, future site selection as providing a list at the next committee meeting, as we have currently in for the next expansion. So it's not that those 3 individuals are expanding and putting more signs out. It's almost saying at the next meeting, when we put options A, B, C forward, they've been discussed there, then this committee absolutely says yes, yes, no.
I don't mind what we put, but I'd just like there to be some transparency about the decisions when they're made. I'd like to see.
Yeah, I think the
decisions
decisions get made here. We can pivot to selections.
Okay.
I think we reach out to the whole council as to suggestions.
Okay,
I think,
if we can
yeah.
find some wording that reflects that, then I'd support that. And lastly, going back to the subject of planning permission, so are we not able to do this under permitted development? Now, I ask because when we did the Rowbarrow site, our officers were adamant we needed planning permission. Had to have it, there were no questions. We hadn't really sort of asked. So I went back to Head of Development, Wiltshire Council, and said, do we need planning permission to do the Rowbarrow project? And they said, absolutely not. Permitted development, fine, go ahead. Off you go. So my question is, can we not do this under PD? Because it appears that parish councils have a far greater remit under permitted development to do things than your average householder has. So have you got something in writing or something from somebody that says you must have planning permission, or have we just assumed that we need it?
So I think we've done 2 things. I think we are paying our partners due courtesy in the first instance. I think we want a relationship which allows us to look at things that perhaps haven't been looked at before or expanded in that way. We may well have some permitted development rights. I know that certainly on this site we didn't. So that was a genuine planning permission request. It may not be the case for Churchill Way or Newbridge Road. They might go.
Great. I will Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wynne.
That's okay. I must be small because I get missed. With the signage, it's great, but we have signage that's for rent on the roundabouts, don't we?
We do.
How much is that actually utilised? Because it's great having extra signage, obviously, we want to make more money.
Mm.
But if the roundabout signs aren't being used, is there a balance?
Yeah, of course. I think what this has told us is that the level of interest that we received early shows us that there's more. The roundabouts, to be fair, haven't been used or sold as much as they should have been. They were an asset that were very much underutilised, and they form part of this portfolio, if you like, of opportunities that we're looking to offer. And there's some examples here of some of the ones that are already existing. There's some banners. If you scroll up, Andy, you'll see another one at Hudson's Field, and you'll see. I think there was one more, Andy. I think no, that was it. So yeah, roundabouts are something we should be doing more of, and we need things like traffic information: how many cars are going past, how many eyes. This ties into a wider advertising and marketing strategy, of course, which is around our social media, landing pages on our Wi-Fi, all of this kind of stuff, support partners for events, a more strategic focus on our assets. As money for old rope, I don't want to use that statement, but we've got them, we should use them. We should look to introduce additional ones where it doesn't upset the aesthetic, just to take Councillor Rogers' point and Councillor Hocking's point. And we should do it sensitively, but we should do it well.
I've been advised. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I have one more very quick question. They're a very specific size, these billboards, let's call them. I mean, they're completely different from any normal billboard size. And was there some science that we decided they had to be the size of a large postage stamp?
Yes.
I mean, I know we don't want them to be offensive, but I mean...
Yeah, we didn't want it to dominate. And we thought, as a pilot, what you wouldn't want is you wouldn't want something that was so large that it just went, well, what have you done? That's crazy. So big enough to be seen, small enough to not matter that much, and to allow an advertiser to be to feel that they're getting value for money. So there was some science behind it for sure.
Perfect. Great. So we're not going to go for one big beautiful bill, which is. So we'll take it one at a time. I will suggest some wording. If there are amendments, we can take them. So first, though, for 5.1, I put the motion that we note the success of the proof of concept based on the information in this report and the answers we've been given. 5.1 is fine. Yep. 5.2, that we change that to this committee endorses further expansion of this activity to the limit of sites mentioned in section 4. And 5.3, the authority of future site selection to be delegated to those people.
If I may, Chair, I think what's being requested here is just that the committee has the delegated authority to decide on the expansion of the programme rather than 3 individuals. But guided by those 3 individuals, the committee would then make those decisions.
Yeah. So that maybe then it's those 3 individuals to provide a list of potential future sites for selection, authority of which will be given to this committee.
May I just add that? Sorry,
Councillor. Suggestion?
No, I mean, I don't know if it even needs to be as complicated as that. We don't need to enshrine that the process is that
the list,
how a list is generated. It can just be for authority on future site selection to be delegated to the Events, Markets and Grants Committee.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll put forward then the motion with those amendments that we finalised for each of those three sections. Do I have a second, Councillor Hockin? Perfect. All those in favour? Perfect. Oh, unanimous. Perfect. So from one sign to another.
Thank you for that. I enjoyed the debate and I look forward to being able to show some more successes in that space. Yeah, more signage. This one perhaps slightly more controversial. There is a
So item 13.
Oh no, toilets. I missed them. Sorry.
Okay. So this will be a verbal update. As you all know, a decision was taken by previous administration to close the marketplace toilets. Some modifications to be made to the existing disabled facility on the square to make it a more accessible for all. And this decision has been met with some controversy, some comment, and met much debate. The elephant in the room, of course, if you like, is that whether the decision to close those toilets or not was absolutely correct or incorrect, the subsequent result of closing them means that events are particularly vulnerable now when we invite people to enjoy the experiences that we're putting on for them on the square. As a result of that, recent conversations, the leader, myself, chief executive, met, and I believe that opposition have been briefed also about this solution that we are looking to put forward. For our Fair on the Square events for both the summer and Christmas, we presented a range of options to leader. Would be to reopen the Market Square toilets, to use our night toilets, to open up our building and allow people to do that over the period, or to hire in professionally toilet blocks or units with companies that specialise in that area. That choice was vastly more expensive than the others, but was felt that for quality, protection of the Guildhall, because we host a number of events, obviously, where we simply wouldn't allow the public to mix. The extra additional cleaning, additional staff, etc., and all of those consumables that potentially would come with that in here, issues of damage, drunken behaviour, that kind of stuff. The decision was taken to hire in some toilet blocks. So for the 6-week period of Fair on the Square, and I don't know if I can say the company, so I won't, but we've gone to a national company who will be providing us with male and female toilets that have tanks that will be emptied during the course of that. The total cost for that is approximately £13,000 for that 6-week period. We will also be looking to do something similar for Christmas. Now, moving forward, I guess there are many more conversations that may or may not be had about the future of the toilets, and I think that's a full council discussion. I believe the paper's coming on the 14th. But for this committee, that decision has been taken. We don't want to invite somebody here and simply say, well, you can please yourself. I think we need to understand that we need to invest in a reasonably good quality facility if we're asking people to come and spend their money and their time with us. So that's the decision that's been taken. It still represents a saving against our original proposition, which was, I think, £250,000 savings for closing both of those other facilities. So we're still ahead of the game, but there's still some work to do.
Thank you very much. And yeah, that sounds a sensible solution. Any questions? Oh, yeah, Councillor Hocking.
Just to reassure people, the toilets that we're talking about are not the ones you see on the building site.
So
Thank you, councillor Hocking. I appreciate that.
I look forward to
I have anything against builders, of course.
I think proclaiming using the bar and then using the toilet block on the 19th.
I have a small comment, is that, I know this is subject to another committee, but when the fair on the square is ended, all the normal people who are outcrying severally and loudly are going to be very upset when this lovely toilet block gets rolled away. So I think everyone should be considering solving the main larger problem rather than the sticking plaster of 13 grand a month.
If I may,
Yeah, no, take that.
Vice Chair, just to say that I think there were certainly some lessons to be learned by this organisation in the presentation of the original decision to close the toilets. I think data, as I've already said, is important to me, plays a role. The use of the public toilets on the square perhaps wasn't as much as people may think. The toilet facilities themselves are substandard. They are unhygienic. They are not a welcome that I would particularly wish to offer you as a visitor or resident of the city. So you're absolutely correct in that those who are upset because they feel that a public service has been taken away, and that's exactly what's happened. But the toilets themselves would not be something that I would be showcasing as a good advert for us or the city. So in that respect, the call was correct. It's what we do next that's going to make it important.
That actually brought a question to my head. During the 6 weeks, what happens at 11 p.m? Do they get locked?
They will be closed. The bar operators will close those toilets.
Great. Any other questions, comments on fair toilet solutions? Perfect. Well, so we've received it. Thank you. Great. Well, now let's move on to digital signage. And number 14, please.
So thanks again. I appreciate it's quite a long agenda this evening. And I must sort of precede this by saying that this in no way is a revenue generating opportunity. What I would like to do is share a short video which will show you where this has just been recently introduced into Belfast and explains a little bit more about the impact that it's had and what it's done to that city. So if you want to, I think it's the third slide, yeah. Thank you. I think that kind of really says it all. I think I've been to a couple of planning meetings in the past where conversations around digital assets have taken place, and it is clearly a controversial subject. What is different about this, I feel, is that feels like a more community sensitive offer. It feels like it offers more free tailoring, such as calls, charging, Wi-Fi. Obviously the defibrillator is a great asset. We have a number of defibs around the city, I think, that have possibly passed their sell-by date or have become unloved and unused. The air quality monitoring is fantastic. Footfall counting is great for events, and the capturing of that data. Built-in CCTV is also good for local authorities and people that look at that. So I think there will clearly be questions. I think what I'm asking for in this report is I'm not seeking a decision on approval. I'm seeking consideration and feedback, but also the opportunity for the Pulse Smart Hub operators to come to a more formal meeting and start to discuss and debate some of the issues that matter to not only councillors but some of the people in the city, like the aesthetic. I've already had some explorative discussions with Wiltshire Creative, the BID, the Cathedral and the museum around how they may feel about something like this in and around their landmarks. They are not against it, nor are they for it. They have the same concerns as most of us would in the room. But generally, the feedback was positive. A considerable amount of money is spent by all of us on advertising events. Money is spent by the NHS on making people aware of public health messaging and various other messaging that is important to the general public. What these platforms do is allow you to do that free of charge to a certain extent. So there will be some economic benefits to the people who spend money on marketing. There should be some community benefits simply because of the functionality. And generally, if we get the locations right, then we should be able to deal with how people feel about them being here. So I'm just simply looking for the opportunity to take this to a wider group for a wider debate.
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, I think today then it's about further consultation, further consideration, and nothing more. I will go down to Councillor Charleston.
Thank you, Chair. I think neither for it nor against it probably sums up quite well how I feel, possibly how many of us feel. It was a really valuable discussion in the last, not the last item, item 12 around the other signage about the non-Disneyfication of the city. There's been a lot of discussion outside of this room, informal discussion on the item in the paper about not wanting this sort of thing, about the fact that on paper similar things have been rejected in the past about the conservation area that we live in, all of which are, I suppose, sort of fair enough. Certainly they were all of those. My initial reaction was down with this sort of thing. But having said that, I think I have many questions. I have a great many questions, some of which are answered by the report. I was very encouraged by, I think it's 3.2 in the report, which is that there is money in a bond with Ofcom, that if the company goes belly up, we're not left nursing some black screens around the city, that they will be removed. There's no risk to us from that point of view. And I suppose as well, my initial visceral reaction to the thought of these things is because you imagine one dumped in the middle of Guildhall Square or outside the cathedral, or the Poultry Cross, indeed, in these areas where perhaps they would not be so appropriate. But on further consideration, I think about something at the coach park or outside the train station or along Fisherton Street, these parts of the city which are not sort of our historic medieval zone, but where perhaps we have tourists entering the city. And I imagine people coming off trains or off coaches and being presented with a sign that says, Guildhall sessions tonight, Guildhall Square, here is how you get there. Or, fair on the square, come and play croquet. Or look at that, the Events, Markets and Grants Subcommittee is meeting in 10 minutes, don't be late. And I would love to have the opportunity to ask some of my questions, raise some of my concerns, seek some reassurance in a wider context, not just secondhand in a report, as excellent as the report is, but directly from the word of mouth from Pulse themselves. I'd like the opportunity to look them in the eye and be assured that what they're not proposing, or if they are proposing, to say absolutely not, is something that isn't in keeping with the city. But I would like the opportunity to have those conversations. And I think that getting them at a point where it's appropriate to come and present to full council is correct, a fully thought out plan for the city, including if such a thing exists, of examples of any other medieval cities that might have put these things in, if any exist. So on that basis, I will be supporting the recommendation, because I think that it's worth continuing the conversation carefully and appropriately. Thank you.
Councillor Corbyn. Okay, Councillor.
So in sort of no particular order, questions and the odd comment of questions don't have to be answered now by any means. Bring us one to have a look at, I think, along with what Councillor Charleston suggested. I'd like to section C1, I guess. We've just seen a video in Belfast, and having been to Belfast a few times, if the locals didn't like them, they'd have burnt them down by now. So they're obviously not that unobtrusive. And Belfast has got its own historic part of the cities as well, much like Salisbury. So parts of us aren't that different, actually. Locations is key. Cathedral Museum sitting on the fence, nothing new there then. Defibrillator and air quality measurement, do we need them? Yeah, no, maybe, don't know. Depends if they're near ones where we've already got air quality monitoring, or is that just for the public to look at and say the air quality is brilliant or rubbish today? Again, I'm just making that point. Critical mass, is there one? Do we need to have a certain number to make the whole thing work? Maybe, again, or is it just one by the station and one in the town centre? Don't know, but again, question I would ask. Installation infrastructure, I'm assuming the cost of that will be borne by Pulse. Yeah, I get the only other thing to say, I've sat in planning committee. I'm really interested to see how it goes in front of this committee this evening, because having seen people go apoplectic in our planning meetings when BT said we'd like to do something a bit similar, everybody went mad. So, the Councillor Riddles and the Councillor Tom Corbyn was, oh my God, we can't have that, it's awful. And there was universal, oh my God, no, never. So I'm interested to see what we say at this committee this evening. For me, I'm really happy for Matt, goes away, has a conversation with Pulse, continues the conversation. When we've got a bit more detail, come back and let's have another chat. Thank you.
Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. As the current chair of planning, I think it's quite exciting. So being as old as I am, I can remember having these big pictures, and you press a button and a little light would light up and it'd tell you where you were going. Then we had these other things, and I think there's still one over there that is big and square, rectangular, and it's got a map on it. So it's no different. All it is the more modern version of what we've always seen in the city. Placement is important, so you'd need it by the railway station, the coach park, Greencroft, not necessarily right in the centre, but where that one over by the library is, there wouldn't be any harm in replacing that with the modern version because it's already there. It might just be smaller, narrower, a different shape, but to have the ability to make a phone call, charge your phone, access a DFIB and do all of those things, I think we do need to see it. Like Sven says, if you see it actually for yourself and contest it and talk to the people that plan to put it in, I think that's the most important thing. And for my other colleagues that are here that are on planning, I think the opportunity to do something a little bit different is great, and all of the opportunities for advertising, yeah, go for it, find out as much as you can.
Yeah, noted. I think just to say, firstly, before you sort of go to, I appreciate the nature of the conversation. It's very good. I think just to say, I have had a conversation already about what if we could make the cases look like the place where they were. So if we could fabricate a sleeve, for example, that looked like the Guildhall or the cathedral or the train station, or so it would be a composite that would slip over the device, so it wouldn't change any of the functionality, but it would give it some character that perhaps they don't have currently. Now, they may or may not be able to do that, but I'm very much aware of how much Salisbury likes the way that it looks and the way that it feels. So that if they can do anything to appease that, or at least present a set of circumstances to us that make us think they absolutely understand who we are as a city and what we want to look like and how we want to present, then that's a level of detail that perhaps people like BT haven't gone to. So I just want to be able to, as I say, I just want to be able to say, look, Pulse, you now have a foot in the door. Now you have an opportunity to really present this to people that are decision makers.
I think what would be most useful is for them to come and do a bit of a consultation, because it seems there's a list of potential things which this does, you know, but maybe there's other things which we think residents and visitors also might find really useful. And that would be the very tailoring that you're talking about. And so instead of them come and present to full council and we say yes or no, but before, come and do a bit of a needs assessment, then go away and come with a tailored proposal for our needs, and then like any other procurement. That's what I would suggest. And my last point is, what occurred to me is everything it offers, apart from the defibrillator, is what nearly every human being has on their phone. If you want to know where you're going, you put in Google Maps. If you want to know what's on, you go to what's on Salisbury if you want to. So I'm not that sure, apart from advertising, I'm not sure what it adds, only to people who don't have a smartphone. I can see that part.
Yeah, and I don't really have a sort of direct response to that. What I can tell you is that during my experience in the NHS, and when there are issues of public criticality, if you like, where messages need to be given to mass audiences in large locations quickly, the out-of-home advertising digital platform really came into its own, particularly during COVID. I was instrumental in introducing that into the NHS in Southampton. And I think there are two things that it does. It gives you a focal point. It will allow people who perhaps don't have the luxury of a smartphone, those who are struggling financially, or those who are homeless, or those who are battling addiction or drugs or alcohol problems, to use a free platform that is in a known location, that will give you direct access to services. So there are some supplementary benefits. Now, I don't get paid a commission from Pulse, by the way. I'm just kind of saying that I found that that these things, once there was some reticence within the NHS for sure, when they thought about it, this is a hospital, this isn't a. Once COVID happened and they realised how important it was and what an asset it became to the health infrastructure, they really sort of bought into the idea. So I think it does have some benefits over and above those listed, but I think you're absolutely right. If we get an opportunity to say to Pulse specifically, well, this is what we would like it to see or do, can it do it? That just allows us an opportunity to tailor it a bit more to our needs.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to explore, support recommendations. I'm probably the least savvy tech person in the room. I'm still struggling to reply to text. Whether it's builder's fingers, I'm not sure. But the reality is we are a tourist city. And if this enhances, the experience of people visiting our city, there's no doubt to me this is the future. It's probably too late for me to understand it even. But I think the things you can do and the information you can get from these points are just phenomenal. And that next generation coming up will absolutely welcome. Will probably demand these, as when they get to voting age. So I think as Sam has said, we want a full detailed investigation in what's available and what benefits it will give the city as a tourist city.
Yeah, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know we need to look at where we're going to place these, but for myself, places like the Market Square and High Street, these look no more obtrusive than the chairs and everything that are building their way along these corridors. So I think it's a really good thing. I think that I'm on the planning committee as well, and I full support a real good look at this, because this is something, again, as Councillor Rogers said as well, this is the future.
I don't want to labour the point, but I'd just like to say that the local, the LVEP partnerships, which are now been decided and agreed for Salisbury, the enterprise partnerships, local visitor for tourism, I think there feels like a push now that the city council is going to become more involved in the tourism business in terms of it being perhaps a slightly higher priority than it was previously. How do we attract, retain, engage and excite people coming into our city? How do we get them coming back? How do we inform them of what's happening and where? How do we get them excited about what's coming next? How do we make sure that they feel safe and comfortable? All of these things are important to people, particularly visitors from overseas, Europe, residents who are perhaps a little bit more vulnerable, people who want to know what's going on and be kept in the loop. So there is a place for these, but we are completely at the decision of this council. So yeah, I would be grateful if you would give the opportunity for them to come and just give you a little bit more information.
Perfect. And Councillor Charleston still in 50 words or less?
Even less than that.
Even less.
I've said my piece. I'll say no more. I'm happy to move recommendation.
Perfect. I just wanted to add before we move to that, whether it needs to be noted, as well as investigate, or to clarify in terms of investigating this opportunity, one of the things that's been discussed outside of this on this topic on previous attempts has been Wiltshire Council Conservation. I don't want to necessarily call them out individually, but they probably should be included. Could we include within this investigation not only Pulse as the provider, but all of the other stakeholders, and actually get clarity from them of the yays, the nays, the opportunities? What can we do? Because otherwise we're just going to end up in the circles.
Chair, you've just put a naught on the cost and a year on the delivery time by doing that.
But potentially it gets us to a solution rather than putting in a lot of time and effort. That's my concern, is if there's been, or why did we fail previously? It's that sense of, I want to get excited. I want to look into the opportunity. But if the big boys are going to come and say no, we should know sooner rather than later.
Okay, and the other thing, you'll notice me on my phone a second ago, I've just messaged my son who lives in Belfast and said, have you seen these things? Tell me what they're like. Do people like them or don't they? So I'll come back on that at some point as well.
Perfect. So as I say, it may not need to be a full, but I think can we start the process of what are going to be the barriers to prevent this? If we support it as a full council, where are we going to get those barriers?
Sure. Pulse have been through this, so they know the score.
Perfect. Great. So, yeah, it was moved by Sam. Perfect. Hocking, I think, got quick to second. All in favour, hands. Perfect. Unanimous. Great. I have no matters of special circumstance nor desire to discuss at this point. Perfect. So for no reason then, I'll give it one big, yep. I call this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you very much.